I'm Nicole, aka Fairies and Fancies, and we're going to make ourselves a little Mothman friend. I start off with this kind of blob of clay, but I'm going to use this tool right now, marking off where I want those little legs to be. So here you can see we kind of have a line for the head. Now we're just forming out the legs as well. And then we're going to smooth out this line to give it more of a head shape. And here you can see I made kind of a triangle shape, almost like a beak for the head. I found glass calves in a size that I liked, and then I'm going to make a nice little indent for them to sit in. Once I get those placed in there nicely, it's time to give this guy some little eyelids. Here I'm just taking small strips of clay and then rolled them into this shape. And then we're just going to give him some little eyelids. Now these are going to make sure that the caps look like eyeballs and like they're a part of the head. We're just going to go ahead and smooth those into the head. And here I'm marking the center of the head because I want his face to look like a moth. So I'm going to start making this little fur texture because I want him to look fuzzy. And you can use many tools for this, a sewing needle, a toothpick, all sorts of things. Now we need to make him his little fluffy ruff around his head. I just took a larger piece of clay and tapered it at both ends. I saw I needed more clay underneath, so I just added a piece right in. Then you're going to want to blend that into the body. I just added clay where I needed it. And now I'm just going to blend that ruff into the head. Now this is an extra step I'm doing because I'm going to be casting this. And this little crack looks like the perfect place for bubbles to hide. I also like the way it looks, so it's up to you whether you want to do this or not. Now it's time to try on some antennas and see what we like. I'm using Cosclay because then my ears won't break off, especially if I'm pulling it out of a silicone mold. And it's just like polymer clay. Now look, I know these antennae look weird, but you gotta trust the process. Now we've got some cuteness going on. I'm using my fingers here to brace the antenna so I can add these details. And you can look at references of real moth antenna. I'm making mine a little thicker than normal because I'm going to be molding and casting this, and I don't want the antenna to break off. Then you want to make sure that you're getting that fur detail around the entire head. Then I want to make sure that my little ruff is blended in really nicely with the body. And since we want this to look like fur and super fluffy, we're going to add that fur texture. And I like to follow the shape of the curve. I want this to look kind of like a ruff, but kind of like the little cape thing that Dracula has. Don't ask me why, it's just what my brain told me to do. Now we're going to use our clay softener, and I'm going to get off all my fingerprints, and this smooths out any rough bits. Then I'm going to go ahead and bake this, that way I don't smash this detail while I'm working on the rest of the body. I ended up doing a little test sculpt to see how I wanted the arms and the feet and the cape to be, and now that I have a plan, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I like this little T-Rex arm pose, so I'm using some bacon bond to attach my arms. And I'm keeping him kind of simple, kind of cute. A little bit of cryptid, a little alien look. We got a lot of things going on. Then I'm adding a little detail to the hands. And making sure that the arms are blended in the back. And that's looking pretty cute. Then I'm just cleaning it up a little bit with some clay softener. I noticed after baking I had a couple issues that I needed to fix, so I'm using some Fix-It Epoxy Sculpt. And I filled in some cracks a little bit more all around the arms, and this I'm doing just for casting. Now it's time to add some cute little feet. It looks like he has little tiny high heels on, which is hilarious. Once I get the feet shape I like, I'm going to blend it in with the polymer clay as well as I can. You really want it to blend in really nicely. I also decided to add the same detail that I added on the hands to the feet. And blending that in really well. I'm using a little bit of safety solvent here to blend it out. It's basically just like the clay softener, but for the epoxy sculpt. Now that it's all dry, you can guess what we have to do next, and that is sand the life out of it. Just keep sanding, and when you think you're done, sand it again. Now I'm sanding all the areas I added clay to just so everything looks very cohesive in like one piece. This video's artist feature is Monster Tooths. You can find them on Instagram. Make sure you go follow them. And this is the Mothman figurine that I bought. He makes the most incredible art toys and art dolls. Look at him. Isn't he the cutest and most terrifying Mothman you've ever seen? Look at those little toe beans. Here they are in different colors, all of them amazing. They make different types of Mothman art dolls and all of them are amazing. Look at this Jersey Devil. Is he not the coolest? He's my absolute favorite that they've made. Make sure to follow him if you want to see all the cool stuff he gets up to. I'll put links in the description. Now back to our Mothman. I started out with 2 different sizes of balls of clay. I ended up using the bigger size. I take those balls of clay and I flatten them out into a rough shape of a moth wing. Then I'm just going to flatten them out. I'm making sure it's the same thickness all the way through. Now here I'm just testing it out, making sure it fits, and then I'm going to add some bacon bonds so that it sticks to our already baked clay. I want this to fit him like very droopy wings, almost like a cape. Kind of think a pouty toddler dragging his blanket across the room. This is the vibe we're going for. And I just make sure I do bacon bond all the way down the wing as I attach it. Just adding on the second wing here. And making sure you have enough bacon bond that it stays on there really well. And here I'm just making sure those wings are attached and then filling in this seam. I just want to give this seam some dimension and make it look a lot nicer than just making a line. Here you can see I'm doing kind of like a valley shape to separate those wings. I'm filling in any little holes that may cause me issues later when it comes to molding and casting. And here I wanted to add some detail to that wing/cape. So I'm making these almost like ruffles. I'm sure Mothman wouldn't want me to say he has ruffles, but I don't know what else to call them. Now I'm just smoothing out each little ruffle area and making it rounded. I went through and added some kind of fabric lines, almost like this was a cape. Here I'm going to go through and add some texture. I'm just using an old toothbrush. I didn't want all this blank space to just be empty and to separate it from the other part so you can see how it makes a difference between the textured side and the untextured side. Now after texturing, I went through with my clay softener and I softened it up just a little bit. After baking, now we can make our silicone mold. I made a very simple mold box using hot glue. And here I'm pulling him out of the mold. And you can see it captures all the detail. This one shows it a little better. I went ahead and trimmed up some excess silicone And I cleaned up the bottom so that my mold would sit flat. Then I'm going to use urethane casting resin. And here you can see me pushing the air out of the antenna. I knew that might be a problem area, so I just made sure to burp out any air, and it worked out really nicely. And then I cure them under pressure. And here you can see it gives me a perfect white replica. And this is great for painting. But we're gonna do some fun ones first with epoxy. Here I'm just adding in the colorant and the resin, along with some really nice glitter. The fun thing about casting is you can make so many effects in different colors, and that's why I love doing it. And here you can see how fun the effect is when you use epoxy resin with glitters and colors. It's a really fun effect. This one I did in a nice neon green, and it also glows in the dark. And then I added some back glitter for fun. This one actually glows in the dark as well. Now we're going to go back to our classic Mothman and give him a paint job. I started off with 2 coats of black paint. The black by itself was a little too boring, so I decided to add some silver highlights. So here I'm just adding on the silver. Now I'm not a super precise airbrusher, so I'm going to have to go back and clean up some of this, but the overspray that I got in some areas I actually really love, so it kind of worked out. So this is my black paint I'm using. And I'm going to go in and paint the areas that I don't want the silver on. I used a dry brush technique right here on the belly because I wanted some of that silver. And then I just used the plain black for any areas that I wanted to be pure black. And then I dry brushed again to get a nice little fade in effect and clean up any of my overspray as well. And then I wanted the lines to pop a bit more, so I added in some more silver. And then dry brushed any overspray I didn't want to show through. Now this red I had was perfect. It was that nice, glowy, intense red. I did use a decent amount of paint for the eyes. I kind of flooded the area, and that gives it a really nice, smooth effect, but you have to be careful not to put too much. If you don't use enough paint, you will have a ton of brush strokes, which will not look good. And here they are. I also did an albino version, which I love how it came out. I think they're absolutely adorable. I hope you like this tutorial. I hope you have fun making your own Mothman. If you want to see what I'm up to next, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.